They knew blood types existed at all. They were not discovered until 1901, when an Austrian scientist named Karl Landsteiner worked out why some blood transfusions killed patients while others saved them. That discovery won a Nobel Prize and made safe transfusion possible for the first time in the decades that followed. As researchers mapped blood types across the globe, they stumbled straight onto the pattern we have been discussing, the astonishing wall of type O in the Americas. It was published, studied, and argued over in scientific journals. For 100 years, nothing was ever buried. What happened instead is far more human. A real, verified, fascinating pattern got detached from its explanation, wrapped in mystery, and sold back to people as a secret. The founder effect is not as thrilling as a hidden bloodline, but it is true, and in its own quiet way, it is far more astonishing. It means the blood of 2 entire continents was shaped by the chance genetics of a few thousand travelers at the frozen edge of the world. It is worth asking why this particular myth spread so easily, because understanding that protects you from the next one. The blood type feels ancient and deeply personal. It is inside you. You cannot change it. So when someone tells you it secretly encodes your true heritage, it lands with the weight of destiny. It offers certainty in a subject like Ancestry that is usually full of doubt and lost records. And for many families whose connection to Native American identity was broken by forced removal, by boarding schools, and by the deliberate erasure of indigenous history in America, a simple physical proof written into the body is deeply and understandably appealing. The myth survives not because people are foolish, but because it answers a real ache with a simple story. But a simple story that happens to be false does no one any favors, least of all the people it claims to honor. Real indigenous identity is not a blood type. It is community, kinship, culture, and, in the eyes of tribal nations, often citizenship and documented lineage, not a molecular flag on a red blood cell. Reducing it to O-negative does not validate anyone's heritage. It quietly replaces a rich, living identity with a laboratory result that could never carry that weight. And here's the part that should genuinely change how you look at your own blood. Every single one of us is carrying the outcome of these ancient accidents. Your type, your Rh status, the haplogroup sleeping inside your DNA, all of it is a record of where your ancestors came from and how they moved. Not a secret code with a hidden owner, but a genuine archive of human migration. The Basque mother and the Amazonian elder and the woman in Oklahoma are all reading pages from the same book, written in the same 4 letters, telling a story that stretches back before any nation, any border, any name we ever gave ourselves. So let me answer the question that started all of this plainly. Is type O negative blood Native American? No. Type O on its own is the most common blood type on Earth and appears in every population alive. It is enriched in Indigenous American ancestry because of an ancient bottleneck, but on its own it points nowhere. And the negative half, the Rh negative part, is, if anything, a signal of deep European ancestry, most concentrated in the Basque homeland and nearly absent from unmixed Native American populations. The phrase O-negative Native American blood is not a hidden truth. It is 2 real scientific stories from opposite ends of the world, accidentally fused into a myth that feels more meaningful than the facts. But the facts, once you actually see them, are the far more incredible story. A frozen bridge, a handful of families, a single blood type carried into an empty hemisphere and multiplied across 10,000 years. So the next time you see a result that reads O-negative, you will know what it really is. Not a lost bloodline, not a buried secret, but a small, honest fact about the surface of your cells tied to one of the most remarkable migration stories our species has ever produced. And you will know the difference between what your blood can tell you, which is real and limited, and what only your DNA can tell you, which runs deeper than any myth. If this changed the way you think about your own ancestry, there is a lot more where it came from. This channel goes deep on the real genetics behind the stories we tell about ourselves, the ones that turn out to be true and the ones that fall apart the second you look closely. Subscribe and stay with me, because the next discovery is one almost no one has heard, and it rewrites something you were taught your whole life as certain Indigenous American populations have high frequencies of certain alleles due to complex demographic histories. While the blood group system is ancient and globally distributed, the scientific reality is far less dramatic than the myth. Yet reality is often more fascinating than the myth. Think about what had to happen for a genetic trait to become extremely common in a population. A small group may have carried certain variants. Their descendants expanded. Other populations became isolated. Generations passed and random genetic changes accumulated. Different populations encountered different environments and diseases. Some groups experienced bottlenecks, while others grew rapidly. Every generation reshaped genetic frequencies slightly. Over thousands of years, these small changes can produce dramatic differences between populations. That is the real story behind population genetics. It is not about one race owning a gene. It is about populations changing through time. The blood group system itself is ancient. Human populations have carried different variants for a very long time, and researchers have considered the possibility that natural selection, including interactions with infectious diseases, has influenced genetic variation. Different pathogens may interact differently with blood group biology, potentially affecting the frequency of certain variants in different populations. But again, this does not create a simple map where O belongs to one continent, A belongs to another, and B belongs somewhere else. Human populations have always moved, mixed, separated, and changed. The genetic map of humanity is not divided into perfectly clean boxes. And that is exactly why the O-negative mystery is so interesting. The claim that O-negative is Native American blood is too simple. But the facts underneath the claim reveal a remarkable story. Type O is indeed unusually common in many Indigenous American populations. The ancestors of Indigenous Americans experienced ancient migrations and population bottlenecks. Genetic drift and founder effects influenced the genetic composition of later populations. The Rh-negative variation has its own distribution and history and is not uniquely Native American. Put these facts together and the conclusion becomes clear. O-negative cannot be used as a reliable genetic signature of Native American ancestry. If someone is O-negative, that blood type alone cannot prove that their ancestors were Indigenous American. It cannot prove European ancestry either. It cannot prove African ancestry, Asian ancestry, or any other complete ancestry story. Your blood type tells you something biologically important, especially for medical purposes, but it does not tell you your entire family history. If you want to investigate ancestry, you need broader genetic evidence. You need to examine patterns across the genome, compare those patterns with appropriate reference populations, and interpret the results carefully. Even commercial ancestry tests have limitations because reference populations are imperfect, and genetic ancestry is not identical to cultural identity. But genome-wide data can provide far more information about ancestry than ABO or Rh blood type ever could. And this brings us to the real revelation. Perhaps DNA did expose something hidden for centuries, but it was not the secret that O-negative belongs to Native Americans. The deeper revelation is that human ancestry is far more complicated than the categories we use today. DNA has shown that the history of the Americas reaches deep into the past. But having a particular blood type does not automatically mean you have Native American ancestry. It does not reveal your complete genetic history. It does not identify your ethnicity, and it does not prove where your ancestors lived thousands of years ago. But your genome contains a much deeper story. Within billions of DNA letters are traces of the people who came before you. Some of those ancestors may have lived in places you have never visited. Some may have migrated across continents. Some may have survived dramatic environmental changes. Some may have lived in populations that eventually disappeared as distinct communities. Their genetic contributions continued through descendants until they reached you. That is the true power of DNA. It does not give us a simple answer to every question. Sometimes it does something more valuable. It forces us to replace a simple story with a better one. So, is O-negative actually Native American? The scientific answer is no, not as a unique ancestral identity. Type O is common in many Indigenous American populations, but it is found around the world. The Rh-negative component is also not uniquely Native American. Therefore, O-negative is not a secret blood type belonging to one ancient people. But the fact that type O became so common in many Indigenous American populations is still an extraordinary clue to human demographic history. It points us toward the effects of ancient population structure, founder effects, genetic drift, and bottlenecks. It reminds us that the genetic history of the Americas is not a simple story. And perhaps that is the most important lesson of all. Your blood type is not your ancestry. Your blood type is not your race. Your blood type is not your identity. It is one small piece of biology. The real story is written across your entire genome. And when scientists read that genome, they find something far more fascinating than a single blood type. They find evidence of migrations, separations, survival, adaptation, and connection. They find a human story that began long before modern borders existed. So the next time you see O-negative written beside your name, remember that those two characters do not contain your entire history. They are only one small clue in a much larger biological story. The real mystery is not whether O-negative belongs to Native Americans. The real mystery is how countless generations of humans moved across the planet, survived changing worlds, and passed their DNA forward until pieces of that ancient journey ended up inside every one of us. DNA did not reveal that one blood type belongs to one people. It revealed something much bigger. Humanity has always been connected by a genetic history far more complicated, ancient, and fascinating than the labels we created for ourselves, and scientists are still uncovering that story, one genome at a time.